Good morning. Call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. We're going to start out as we normally do with the introduction. I'm Byron Chapman, Mayor, City of Middletown, and I'll be chairing this TPC today. To my right,
Jack Couch, Executive Director of KIPTA. Welcome, everyone.
I'm Rick Tonini, Mayor of St. Matthews, here because Bernie can't be.
Tanya Higdon with KYTC Central Office.
Matt Bullock, I'm with KYTC District 5.
Antonio Johnson, Federal Highway, Indiana Division.
Aida Kopik, Dark.
John Callahan with Louisville Metro.
Sherry Connor, City of Chicago.
who was it?
Justin Tackett, Floyd County.
Andy Crouch, City of Jeffersonville.
Brittany Montgomery, Town, Clarksville.
Jim Moody, NDOT.
Brian Dixon, Clark County.
Larry Cheney, KIPTA.
Sarah Bear, KIPTA. Amanda Duffridge with KIPTA.
Nick Vale with KIPTA.
David Burton, KIPTA.
Andy Rush, KIPTA.
Tim Robinson, GRW. Sean Dykes with HDR. Douglas Robinson, Trimar.
Tim Emmington, Trimar.
Kelly Carrico, University of Louisville.
María Luisa, KYTC.
And Thomas Witt, KYTC.
Welcome, everyone. Moving right along, item number 2, September 28th meeting, approval of the minutes. Have a motion?
So
Have a motion. Second. Any additions or corrections? All in favor, aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item number 3, this is a public comment period. Anyone wish to address this board? Hearing no one. Item 4, public meeting report. Mr. Cheney?
We have no public meetings for this past month. We attended several meetings for other agencies. Public meeting on Chenoweth Lane the other night, some other things that we've done. We will be continuing on a regular basis our public outreach and our public meeting reports as soon as Miss Ashley Davidson-Tinius returns on Monday from maternity leave. We are anxious to have her back.
Good deal. Thank you so much. Item number 5, Jeff O'Brien's not here, so we're gonna move on to item 6, Indiana dedicated funding priorities. Nick Vale.
Yes, sir.
Nick, you're up.
Thank you. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Today's presentation, our presentation should be pulling up here in a minute. This is for Indiana dedicated funds. With KIPTA, we manage STP, CMAC, congestion mitigation, air quality, the TAP, and the HSIP, Highway Safety Improvement Program funds for all 4 of those programs. So this is an item that is brought to y'all's attention about every quarter of the year, where we bring funding changes and phase shifts and things like that. First, for a little background, last year you all approved the program management process, or the PMP. That process set rules in place for limitations on cost increases for projects and phase shifts, kind of put some rules and some meat to all the things we do internally to manage our dedicated funds. And like I said, in Indiana, we have all 4 programs that we manage, whereas in Kentucky, it's just the TAP and STP. The program management process really outlines 3 things for us that are important when talking about Indiana dedicated funds. The first is how we manage costs. Project sponsors may request additional funds when they're available. If the cost increase request is more than 20% of the original cost of that phase, then they need to submit an exception letter, and those are presented to you all for more specific approval. So that's when the increase is over 20%. If it's under, really there's nothing other than an application that they submit. We also try to do a better job of managing schedules in terms of getting projects completed on time. We understand that delays do occur, and for those reasons we allow up to 2 phase shifts for each phase over the life of that project. There's also exceptions to those. If you go beyond the 2 phase shifts, you can request an exception, and we'll present that to TPC. And then the last thing is, in Indiana, because we have all 4 programs, and because they do not allow us to carry over funds from one year to the next, transferring funds between programs happens a little more often. So this year, in fact, we're transferring a little bit of HSIP, CMAC, and TAP funds into the STP program in order to create as much flexibility as possible in advanced projects in whole. So get into the kind of the details there of what we did this past quarter. So we announced to all the Indiana project sponsors about a month ago that we had $54,043 in available funds. You can see the mix of funds there on the left, CMAC at around 47, HSIP around 27,000, STP at 171, and then TAP with 7,000. So what we do is we cobble together those funds, and we're able to do that because those amounts are all less than half of what we were allocated in that fiscal year. So that's how the Federal Highway Program rules work under the Surface Transportation Block Grant. So all that's kind of the background to say that when we submitted the announcement for funds, we received 2 requests. Both came from New Albany. Mount Tabor Road requested $52,475 for the right-of-way phase. That's just a portion of the funds they actually need to complete that phase of the project. And then we added, they requested $201,568 to help complete the construction of the Ohio River Greenway project, which is actually funded with CMAC funds. Both of these requests were under $20,000, so no exceptions were needed, and no other cost increases were requested from other project sponsors. So the proposal that's being made today and that was recommended by TTCC is to approve those cost increases for those 2 projects. There's also another special request, and it does get a little complicated, and Brittany Montgomery is here from the town of Clarksville to talk a little bit more about that. I'll kind of set the stage though. So they have kind of a unique challenge in that their request, so I'll talk about the request a little bit and then let her get into the details of why this is necessary.
Jeff, do we need to go ahead and, do we need to go ahead and vote on the cost and increases for the 2, or do they come all together?
Yeah, we'll do them all together
Okay.
right at the end. Yes, sir. So what you can see here in the top red chart is how these 2 projects, Blackiston Mill Phase 1 and Blackiston Mill Phase 2. Sorry, I've been getting that wrong a lot. So both of these projects were funded with construction dollars. Phase 1 was funded with $818,000 in fiscal year 2018 HSIP funds, and the construction of Phase 2 was scheduled to use 2020 STP funds. Now, because of the issues that Brittany's going to talk about, what they're requesting is they're not asking for more funds, they're asking to simply shift the construction funds in 2018 to the right-of-way phase, use the 2020 STP funds that were for Phase 2 and split those out, use a portion to complete the construction of Phase 1, and then use the remaining $349,000 and change to start the right-of-way phase. So those are the changes that are being made to those projects, and I'll let Brittany kind of just speak a little bit to the background.
Give me, maybe right here.
Right there's fine, yeah.
So, I guess first off, we'd like to thank you guys for considering our request. The issues we have encountered in this project were unforeseen. We initially submitted the application in 14, I believe is when we actually submitted that application. The first one is in regards to Phase 1, just like you know, Phase 1, if you're familiar with the area, Black's Mill Road starts at Lewis and Clark and actually goes up into New Albany over Silver Creek. But this phase is from Lewis and Clark to just north of the Kroger Drive. And the issue we have encountered is, since this is all one federal project, there's a Phase 3 that eventually takes it up to Gutford Road. We had to do an environmental document, and there's a cemetery just north of Phase 1 that's in Phase 2, but it's close enough to Phase 1 that we encountered problems. It's a public document, but at this point we encountered 17 unmarked graves under the existing roadway. And that has considerably slowed the process down. We've been doing several public hearings. We had one last night, and I think we finally have some resolution as to where those graves will be reinterred. But because of that, our environmental document has taken almost a year longer than anticipated and additional costs. Town's not asking for additional funding, we're just asking that we move the dollars because we have not been able to start right-of-way, which brings us into another issue. When the right-of-way was initially bought as part of the Lewis and Clark relinquishment in '97, apparently the town paid for I think the best way to put this, essentially lease of the road, right of way, we did not pay any damages. So in our plat, it shows that we own right of way on the Kroger property. However, since no damages were paid when it was bought, we now have to pay for those damages. We did not realize that until the title work was complete. That means our right of way cost went from $300,000 to $1.1 million.
That's a lot of damage.
That's a lot of damage. It's a lot of parking on that Kroger is one of the busiest in the area, and it's a lot of parking. Which again, when we initially submitted our project, we did not anticipate either of these circumstances. So, while the town is committed to the project, and we are committed to overfunding the project, that is not something we can accomplish in the short time frame we would have needed to get to construction this fiscal year. And, the funding is just not available this fiscal year. So that is why we are asking for the shift. I had meant to look before I came this morning, what the town's contributions have been to this point, but I can tell you at this point we've already overmatched. We're at around 600,000. We're at now that we've already overmatched because we're paying for the additional preliminary engineering environmental costs out of pocket. We're not asking for additional funds. We are committed to getting phase 2 under construction, but we do not have a time frame for when that will happen. Again, these unanticipated things have just caused problems. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have about the request and what we've run into. I gladly go into what it takes to rebury graves you find under a road. Or recommend you don't purchase, you always pay your damages when you initially purchase property.
Thanks, Brittany. If there's any questions for Brittany about Clarksville specific request or the New Albany request, feel free to ask.
Any questions? Are you ready for action?
In the mail-out packet, there was a document that says, was titled Indiana Project Review Recap, list of proposed changes. All of those proposed changes are what we're presenting today and asking for TPC action to approve these changes to the Indiana dedicated funding priorities.
Okay.
This was recommended by TTCC.
All right, do I have a motion?
I just have a question before
Yes.
we go to the motion. CMAQ funding for 2018, do you mind going back to the slide, please? The actual funding, it was
Oh, sorry.
slide with, yeah. It's 47,000 only for 2018?
That's how much was left over
Left
after
over.
we funded
Excellent, okay.
the two projects.
Thank you, and there are no changes in these previous?
That's correct. These are
Thank
the
you.
only changes.
Nothing changed except
These
those
4
two.
things.
Thank you, I
Yep.
appreciate that. And I would like to make a comment for the Clarksville project and changes. If this is what will deliver the project and this shift is needed, I think that's the right thing to do, even if it's different and not typical request.
Any other questions or comments?
Any questions, comments?
I had a question. I think Brittany answered it in our last meeting, but it might help us here to address that question as well. When you go back to the slide there, so you're shifting phase 2 construction, looks like to phase 1 construction, splitting that right away, correct?
Correct.
The question I believe I asked before, so you'll probably be ready, is regarding then moving, what are the funding sources going to be for that construction phase now that you've shifted from the construction phase? I know it's years out.
For phase 2, we don't have a definitive right now. We are looking at possibly funding that 100% local using redevelopment funds. We are also speaking with the water company to do some large work through there. Maybe they can help us with some of that. I cannot roll out the fact that we may come back at a later date and ask for additional funding for phase 2 construction because we've had to move that. Can't make that promise. We won't look at that, but we're just exploring options after we get through right of way as what funding may be available. What funding may be available.
What would be the dollar amount for phase 2?
Phase 2 construction is just under 1.2 million. And phase 2 takes you from Kroger up to Ultra Drive, which is the first curve.
Other questions? Waiting for a motion?
So moved.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Any other comments? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item number 7, Connecting Kentuckiana update. This is David and Nick. Who wants to go first?
I will get us started. So David's handing out a handout that briefly lays out kind of a rough draft schedule of two things that we have coming up. The first is we have a fiscal year 2018 to 21 tip. That's our current tip that was approved back in August of this year. And so we're going to go through an opportunity to amend our current tip one more time before we complete our new MTP update, which is Connecting Kentuckiana. And in conjunction with that, there'll be a new 2019 to 2022 tip. So this handout kind of lays out in the top section the schedule for the tip amendment. So this is the only opportunity we have currently scheduled to be able to add new projects to the tip in most cases. There's always a few exceptions, but in most cases, brand new projects would need to be added through this cycle unless you can wait until fiscal year 19 when our new Connecting Kentuckiana and fiscal year 19 to 2022 tip are approved. So I'll walk through briefly on the top half of this slide kind of the different steps we have coming up. And next week, just know that I'm going to send out an email about this tip amendment with more detail, more information for all the project sponsors who might be submitting new projects and changes.
Everybody have a copy? Okay, good, thanks.
All right, so looking left to right on the top half of this column, there are activities for the project sponsor, TPC and TCCC, and then there's activities that KIPTA staff will take care of. So the first milestone you see is that project information forms, or PIFs, will be due from project sponsors towards the end of December. And then staff will utilize most of the month of January to review those. If there's any air quality analysis that needs to be done at that time, we will do that, and then take the complete amendment out to the public in February before we return to you all here, and of course DTCC as well, for approval of the Amendment 1 to the current tip. So new PIFs due in December, staff analysis January, public meeting February, and approval here at the TPC level in March. At that point, we send our documents on to the feds in Indiana and Kentucky and await their approval. So we're looking at March, April timeframe there, which kind of kicks us and leads us into the formal development of the Connecting Kentuckiana and fiscal year 2019 to 2022 tip that David's going to talk about.
Okay, what we're trying to do is make this as seamless as possible between the top half and the bottom half of this page, the 2018 to 21 tip, and the Connecting Kentuckiana and 19 to 22 tip. Basically, what we're looking to do is try to get things rolling in March of 18 and wrap things up October of 18. That will include project development, public involvement, and then eventually bring the final draft document to this committee for your recommendation or your approval. That would then go to the federal agencies for their review, and then hopefully we'll be in place to have a tip ready to roll by October of 18. That's pretty much where we're going. I don't want to go over all the little squares with you, but I do want to make sure that you're comfortable with the schedule and mix well with the amendment schedule and the tip schedule on both halves of this sheet. When we do get to the project development phase, we're going to be able to pull in a lot of the tools that we've been developing over the years, and we're excited about that, and believe the schedule will work and will get us to a document in the fall of 18. Larry, you want to add anything to this?
No, we just appreciate all of your support and everything that we've done to this point to get this new document and this new way of doing things underway. We'll be asking a lot of you as far as project development is concerned in the next 3 to 4 months. So bear with us. Don't hesitate to ask any questions. Come to us with any concerns that you might have, and we'll get this done together. We have no choice but to get this done together because our current document expires somewhere around October, so.
So I guess the highlights are that we want to, with the intent that with the 18 to 21, this is a really good opportunity for you to look at what you have in the tip. Is that right, Nick? And then
That's right.
and make sure that the projects that you have in there are up to date. And if you have anything new you want to bring into the tip, this would be a perfect opportunity to do that before things kind of slow down a little bit with the tip as we complete the development of the MTP.
And there will still also be monthly opportunities to do administrative modifications to the current tip, so that's not going away. But in most cases, new projects that aren't in our tip normally need to go through an amendment process. I'll shoot out an email next week with more details about that amendment.
Okay. There's no action, but any questions?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So, will there be a quarterly review or a review meeting prior to the
There will.
PIF update in December?
There will, and to that end, with the PMP, we started rolling out these more. I think last quarter was the first kind of formal quarter. It's kind of a transition. We've developed kind of a year-long schedule that we're going to provide to all the project sponsors, so that everyone can plan ahead well in advance and have more than just a few weeks to come up with whether they're phase shifts, cost increases, or just general state changes to those types of projects as well.
Another question. So this amendment the PIFs would be due in December, and then the next amendment wouldn't be until October of.
Right, with the new tip essentially.
So if, what about if something like CMAQ or TAP awards occur during that time?
Right. We do understand, and so right now we're not planning for them, but we understand that there's an open. CMAQ projects were submitted, I think, to KYTC a month or two ago. TAP projects were submitted maybe earlier this month. There could be decisions made on those after December when PIFs are due. And then also a new state highway plan that may come out in the spring-ish timeframe. So we're cognizant of all those, and if any of those projects are awarded fiscal year 18 money that they need to get in the tip before our new document is approved in October, then we will do what we need to make another amendment process happen if that's the case. We're not going to let a project that gets awarded 18 funds not get in the tip because of this, but it would be our preference not to, but we definitely understand that's a possibility.
We just need your help on forward with your schedules and your cost increases to ensure that we can get as much going in unison, so that everything works out at the end to be okay. Rick Nick's right. If you do have opportunities to fund new projects that are CMAQ or TAP, we'll make every effort to make that happen. But we just want you to work as much as you can on your schedule.
Right. And if they come that late in the year, they're likely $19 anyway.
Right.
Much more likely to be $19. We don't anticipate a lot of brand new projects that would have to go through the amendment process in that window of 3 to 4 months. But it would be important to stay on top of the administrative modifications. And if you do know something that hasn't been programmed at all that has $18, then we definitely need to get that in as part of this amendment.
Good question, thank you. Any other questions or comments about the schedule?
Question about connecting Kentuckiana.
Yes,
Obviously, we've seen so many documents and so much work done, and now we are approaching the phase when the plan will be drafted. What will be kind of the schedule presenting these drafts or parts of the actual plan to the TTCC and TPC?
Our hope is to start bringing you some of these as individual modules of the MTP. So as we go through project development, we're not going to wait and give you the final draft document to go over the projects. We'll bring you the projects that are being proposed. When we look at the impacts, that'll be a second or third module that we'll bring to you prior to drafting the final document. So there will be ample opportunity, and we want this opportunity for you guys to take a deeper look at some of the key pieces that we're going to bring forward.
And how about performance measures? Did we close and adopt the performance measure document, or is it still open? Is it pending state proposals for?
Right now, if you recall, the TPC approved a performance management plan a while back. As the federal guidance has come forward and the states are working on their performance measures, we're currently in the process of trying to coordinate as much as we can with the states and do so under the schedule of completing the MTP. With that said, there's the possibility that some of these performance measures may come out after we go for adoption. What we've been talking about doing internally is circling back after we get adoption and look at some of these performance measures again to make sure that the MTP addresses all the performance measures that you have asked us to look at and that the federal government is wanting us to make sure that we incorporate into our planning process.
Thank you.
So we feel pretty confident about it.
And we may be able to include the performance measures in some capacity. Performance targets may be a little bit different.
Right. Exactly.
They're a little bit further out.
We are all learning as we go because all other federal agencies like FDA and state and federal highways, so performance measures are a hot topic, but no one really nailed them down 100%.
And if you remember, we set goals and objectives and targets
Exactly.
several years ago that we're using as part of our process up to and including the ones that we get from the state. So.
Mr. Johnson, I hate to put you on the spot, but have you heard anything from Federal Highway Administration anything recent relative to performance targets or measures that we need to, that this body should be aware of as we go
I
forward?
believe all the dates have been set. I don't have the dates on me right now, but I believe all the dates have been set and they're going to be rolling out 2018. So I know safety is the first one, and then the other ones sometime in 2018. As far as FTA, I forget which region this side of the river is in, but FTA should have sent
We're both.
Guidance about 3 months ago, I believe. I can inquire about that with Region 5.
That'd be great.
Sure, and I'll check with Region 4 as well.
We have several people on our staff, Amanda, Andy, Nick, who are keeping the fingers on the pulse of both the federal directions that are being taken, performance measures and performance targets, and with both the states of Indiana and Kentucky on their rolling out the performance targets relative to federal guidance and relative to what TARC is looking at relative to the TAM, or their Transportation Asset Management Plan. So we are trying to cover, and I think we're doing a really good job of covering as many bases as possible to make sure that we meet the intent of the transportation planning changes, performance-based transportation planning. I think we're doing a really good job. So I feel good, and I think you'll be happy with the final product.
Yeah, and after the fiscal year, you will probably see more interaction between me and Greg on KIPTA and the two states. We're just not there yet.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions? If not, moving on to item number.
Jeff is here.
Number 5. Jeff, are you ready? You want to?
I'm ready.
All right, good deal. Jeff's going to be here, coming today to talk to us about the Louisville Metro Comprehensive Plan update. The floor is yours, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
We'll pull it out for you.
First of all, thank you all. My name is Jeff O'Brien. I'm sorry that I'm running in the meeting. I'm with the Louisville Metro Government and the Office of Advanced Planning. And we've been working really for the last year to update Cornerstone 2020, which is the county's comprehensive plan. So I just kind of wanted to give everybody an update, and I know I see a lot of our cities in here. So just so everybody knows that Louisville Metro government has to adopt the comprehensive plan, but 12 of our suburban cities, Shively, St. Matthews, Middletown, Jeffersontown, the larger ones in Jefferson County also have to adopt the comprehensive plan. So just to give everybody an overview of where we are, this is what we're required to have a comprehensive plan to have zoning regulations. So I know some of you that are at TTCC have heard some of this before. KRS requires that we have a land use component, a transportation component, and a community facilities component. In addition, we can have some optional, elements that are available to us if we would like to, if we choose to do that. This is the cover of Cornerstone 2020 with our beautiful clip art. You can get a black and white version of this if it's too brilliant for you, but this plan was adopted by the city of Louisville and Jefferson County in the year 2000. So we're approaching the horizon date of that plan, which is the year 2020. So we've been working to update this. The plan currently has 5 elements in it. So it has community forum, which is our land use element, again, one of those required components. Marketplace, which is economic development, that is an optional component to the plan. Mobility and transportation, another required component. Livability and environment, that's an optional component. And then community facilities, another required. So that's the 5 that we have in our plan today. And the plan specifies that we have goals, objectives, and then policies, which is really the operative part of the plan, that when we have a development proposal brought forward to Louisville Metro government or one of the suburban cities, oftentimes we look directly at the policies for is the development compliant with the comprehensive plan. In addition to those 3 components, the 4th component are the core graphics, which is basically a mapping component of the map of the plan. So those are the elements in the comprehensive plan today. So what's going to happen in the region over the next 20 years? We contracted with the University of Louisville and the Kentucky State Data Center to determine how the county was going to change over the next 20 years. And so we can see the MSA, according to those projections, we're going to increase from about 1.3 million today to about 1.5 million, and that's those counties that are up there on the screen. You can see the map on the left is the raw projection, so just the number, and then the map on the right is the percentage. So you can see that Jefferson County is going to be taking the bulk of the growth in terms of number, but a lot of our outlying counties are going to see a large percentage growth in population. This is how the county is going to grow over the next 20 years, and again, the map on the right or on the left is the raw growth, and then on the right is the percentage of growth. Right now, Jefferson County has about 760,000 people, give or take. By the year 2040, we're projecting that we'll have about 875,000 residents in the county, so growth of about 125,000 over that time. And you can see that number's a little bit different down here because we started with the 2010 census when we had U of L do those projections for us. So you can see the bulk of the growth is going to happen in that area between I-264 and I-265. We are going to see a large percentage growth in the Floyd's Fork area. That's an area that we expect to see a lot of growth, but infrastructure is really going to dictate a lot of that. And we have a separate study right now that is looking explicitly at Floyd's Fork and what policies do we want to implement in that area. So that's a process that's going on kind of concurrently with the comprehensive planning process. And again, this is giving you an idea on how employment's going to grow. This is a little bit less stable. These numbers are smaller, so they're a little bit less stable than the population growth. But just giving you an idea, again, jobs are growing mostly in the suburban areas of the county. So the way that we approach this plan is we are updating Cornerstone 2020. We think that's a good base document for Louisville Metro and Jefferson County. And what we've identified are really 5 places where we think the plan needs to be updated and enhanced, and that's we've kind of broke this down into 5 big principles. So we call them our CHASE principles: connected, healthy, authentic, sustainable, and equitable. And these are the words underneath each of those words are some words that we actually got from Louisville residents. So what do they think those words mean? And so then we started building in components to Cornerstone 2020's policies and goals and objectives based on that information. And so that's how we've approached updating this plan. And we've had a pretty robust public engagement period over the past year. It's really, we started the public engagement process last August, and we're coming quickly to the conclusion of that. We conducted a couple of community surveys. We've done some targeted outreach, so we've always looked at where we've had meetings and where are we missing people in the room, and so we've done a couple of targeted outreach pieces where we see we're not getting representation from the county. The bulk of our outreach has been through work groups. So we broke our work down into 6 work groups. The 5 areas that I mentioned that are currently in Cornerstone 2020: land use, transportation, community facilities, livability and environment, and economic development. And we added a 6th component, housing. And so we formed 6 work groups around those topics, and those groups have met a lot between November and this past September. We've used tools such as a priority setting board. Some of you might have seen that, the big colorful board that we took around and had people put stickers on. That was kind of a quick way for us to do that. And we also did some supplemental outreach with meeting in a box, which meant people meeting, had a book group, had a church group they wanted to meet with. They didn't have to come to a public meeting. We really kind of gave them the opportunity to participate in their own dining rooms. This is kind of where these are all the different tools and engagements. So you see those work groups met 52 times throughout in about 10 months. So my colleagues and I spent a lot of time coming up with fun games and ways to get people to participate. We want to make sure that we did a lot of small group participation in that. We didn't want to have a person dominate a room, so we tried to break people down into small groups as much as possible. That's really all told. We've had about 6,600 people participate in this process, which is significant over Cornerstone 2020. I think our claim with Cornerstone 2020 is 600 people participated, so we've had quite the increase there. These are some shots. This is the big priority setting board that we had a night where we were at the Louisville Bats game, and we did some mapping to have people tell us where they were from, so we could, again, one of these things that we're trying to benchmark where are we missing representation from in the county. All of our work groups kind of went through the same process. So again, the work groups were our big community outreach piece, and we put them all through the same process. We gave them a little background, we gave them the analysis, so a more in-depth overview of that data that I just presented to you. And then we had them develop goals, develop objectives. Again, those objectives were really focused around those 5 principles. And then we had them update the policies in Cornerstone 2020. And that's what we've spent the last 10 months doing. So these are each of the work groups, and you can see what we went through. These groups, just kind of a summary of where they met and what they've gone through. The big takeaway here is that in Cornerstone 2020, we have about 60 pages of goals and objectives right now. We've really tried to boil that down. We're down to 6 pages of goals and objectives. Really something that is more memorable to the community and a little bit more high level. So really trying to get people to, I think we're at 21 goals and 104 or so objectives. So in Kentucky, we're really focused on those goals and objectives. And so we've really tried to keep them into high level places and kind of capture some of the big things that are occurring through the community. So community facilities, they really focus on access, planning, and design. These are a couple of the highlights from that group. And so we're really trying to focus more around sustainability and long-range planning needs of the community. Community forum, this is our big group. This is really the land use and forum districts and zoning. And so they really met all throughout the county. They met the most, and we're probably our most structured group. But again, this is one of our most structured elements. And really, they came up again here with 5 goals around 4 big topics, and they were really focused on keeping our current zoning, but trying to think about having more flexibility and encouraging redevelopment and incorporating some historic preservation elements into the plan. Housing is a new element, although really their job was to take the elements that are the housing components that are in Cornerstone 2020 and really consolidate them in one chapter. So really this is a new element, but it's really just a massive reorganization of the items that are already in there. And what they've got, what they really came down to, as you can see, my first bullet point there, but we've changed our wording in Cornerstone 2020. We called affordable housing appropriate housing in Cornerstone 2020. So we've updated the language to be fair and affordable housing. And then we've really kind of looked at promotion of our affordable housing programs. And we've put a policy in there about, having inclusionary zoning when financial incentives are given to developers, which is kind of Metro Council's current practice today. Livability and environment. This group has really broadened. Right now, it's really focused on the natural environment. We broadened it out to include the topics of health and equity. And so we also brought in the sustainability and resilience component here, but really this was a group that had a lot of work around around bringing health and equity into the plan, since that's something that Louisville often, and the region often ends up on a pretty low list when it comes to public health. So we've really kind of put a couple of policies in there to try to encourage and promote a healthier community. This is our tree canopy. So we also know a lot. We get dinged a lot on our tree canopy. So we talk about tree preservation and enhancement of the tree canopy in this section as well. And then marketplace economic development. This one didn't change a lot other than we broke it into two goals about being a competitive economic region and also improving quality of life so that we're better at talent attraction. It's one of the things that Louisville Metro's economic development department works a lot on is having a educated and competitive workforce. So they've really added some language in here about growing and supporting our small and mid-sized businesses, recognizing that those are just as important, if not more important, than our large businesses. And then looking at areas that need investment in terms of infrastructure and development. And then finally, mobility, something that's near and dear to this group's heart. Cornerstone 2020 has a lot of really good mobility policies already. A lot of the bike and multimodal components are already in Cornerstone 2020. So we really just did some updating, brought some of the information in there from Move Louisville, and broadened some of the bike stuff out to more ped and transit and thinking multimodal. We've also brought freight into this more. There was not a whole lot of freight in Cornerstone 2020, so we brought more about freight into the plan. Our timeline moving forward, so we're a little out of date there. Our next meeting, we did have a meeting on September 26th. Our advisory committee, which is overseeing the whole process, and it's got a representative from KIPTA, Jefferson League of Cities, Louisville Metro Council, various development and agency representatives are on that group, including MSD and the Airport Authority, JCPS. They're overseeing the drafting of the document. Their next meeting is November 13th now. They've met a couple of times. They're going through the policies, and we expect that they will conclude their review at the end of this year. We will have a draft document probably closer to the end of the year versus November. And we'll make a recommendation to the Planning Commission. The advisory committee We'll do a public review of the draft in early 2018. We'll go out, we've already started some outreach to the suburban cities. We'll come out and sit down with the suburban cities and kind of walk them through what's in the plan, what's not in the plan, listen to concerns. Planning Commission, we anticipate we'll hear this, we'll start its public hearing process in March. And we'll be starting the adoption process with Metro Council and again the 12 suburban cities. Start with Metro Council likely in April and then move to the suburban cities in the middle part of 2018 and then move through the adoption process. And that's kind of a very high level, very quick overview of what we've done with Cornerstone 2020. I'm one of the project managers, Joe Haberman. My colleague in Planning and Design Services is the second project manager because there's a long-range planning and then a regulatory component to the comp plan. all the information that you just saw, everything that the specific policies and goals and objectives that we developed is all up on that website. And my contact information is there. I'm happy to answer any questions. That's a lot of information super fast. It's hard for me to get it any smaller and for a year-long process. Are there any questions? Great.
You do a fine job.
All right. Well, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that, and I appreciate everybody listening to me intently. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call, and I appreciate the opportunity, Larry and Jack. Thanks.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 8, fiscal year 2018 and 21 transportation improvement program. Nick, you're up again. This is your day.
I know it's quickly become my day. So today I'm just presenting what will likely be a monthly recurrence of administrative modifications to the current fiscal year 18 to 21 TIP. There's quite a few in here, but most of them are things that have, well, all of them are things that have already been brought to your attention with the exception of a couple maybe NDOT state projects. So what we have in here is, so last month, TPC approved a whole host of changes to Kentucky STP urban projects. So there's 20, 25 different projects in here that you guys approved last month. It also includes the 4 changes that were made to the Indiana projects today, a couple presentations ago. And then, like I said, there's 1 or 2 state NDOT projects in here, and then a few cleanup, basically cleaning up some of the TAP funding that didn't occur in, a few TAP projects didn't make it in 2017 and are moving out to 2018. I can definitely answer any questions you have about these. It's informational purposes only, so there's no action today.
Any questions for any of these projects? Very good.
Mayor, I do have one thing to say about the TAP program in particular, and it may translate to some other programs as well. There is a real possibility that at the end, in Kentucky right now, at the end of this fiscal year, if we don't spend the dollars that we have programmed, we could lose as much as $1.4 million worth of TAP funds that are getting ready to expire. So I encourage you, if you have a TAP project that's in fiscal year 18, please get it obligated and get moving on the project so we won't lose those funds. Because if we do, it's going to affect the program in the future, and your project may have to move out even further.
Is there any way you could tell us which of those projects are, contact, let's say, Middletown and say, hey, you need to get on the stick?
We
can
are,
do that.
yes, we will.
Okay.
We're going to do that shortly. We've been doing that on a limited basis anyway, but it's becoming more and more important, and these quarterly reviews that we're going to have are going to bring that a little bit more in focus too.
We don't want to lose it for sure.
No, we do not want to lose it.
Okay. Assist us all in making sure that we do our part.
Thank you.
Any other comments on item 8? Item number 9, other business before this board. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye? Good day. Thanks for attending today.